The PlayStation Portable, I have so many good and fun memories with this device. I can still remember that I picked it up. I think it was around 299 freaking euro when it just came out. This thing was absolutely cool. For me it felt like a mini PlayStation 2. You can bring a lot of cool games with you. I think the first game I ever picked up for this was Fired Up. And later on I bought of course Tekken 5, Tekken 6, Power Stone Collection. Man, the list goes on. Metal Slug Collection. There are so many crazy good games for the PlayStation Portable. But I think it's so pretty damn cool to just play this thing on your television in combination with some emulation. PP, SSPP have a lot of features, they can even upscale it so it looks even better on your big screen. So if you want to play these games on your big screen, it will need a lot of power. The question remains, what can we do and how can we play it? That is what we're going to talk about today with the different game boxes you can pick up from AliExpress. It's a jungle out there with all kinds of versions that you can pick up. I just want to do a chit chat with you guys, so which one is the best one for you when it comes for PlayStation Portable emulation and which one should you avoid. And it's not really worth picking up when it comes to PlayStation Portable. I want to welcome you to the channel and also the jungle of game boxes. In this video I'm going to focus particularly on a certain platform for emulation. So when it comes to game box, there are so many versions out there, but basically there are only a couple of them or a handful that are quite good when it comes to emulation. But depending on the platform that you want to play, also there we're going to get some significant differences. So that's the reason I want to make these videos, to help you out, to guide you through this jungle of different game boxes so you know what to get for what kind of platform you want to play. So in the last couple of years I've been buying these things as crazy just to see which one is basically worth your money. Because there is a lot of them out there, they're absolutely completely garbage, they look cool or they look absolutely awful, but they work pretty damn good. Also, I just wanted to explain what it is for the people who have no idea what a game box is and basically what you need to look out for. So let's go with the flow and let's see what we're going to get today. What is actually a game box? A game box is nothing more than an Android box. And for the people who are thinking, what is an Android box? An Android box is basically like a PCB inside a case that runs on Android. Android is an operating system that gives you the possibility to basically watch some Netflix and do all kinds of cool stuff with it. So nevertheless, just what you're going to get is actually an Android box that they have modified in some kind of a way. We're also going to talk about in this video about the modification because they did some interesting things lately. So basically an Android box is the similar thing that you can find in your smart TV. It's more like a piece of equipment that you can pick up and hook up to a monitor and just have new functionalities. It will basically is your gateway for basically going into Netflix, Amazon Prime and stuff like that. And also on your phone, your Android phone, you can download and play games. And also you can download emulators and play retro games. There are basically so many different ways to go to. When it comes to the Android boxes, there we have a lot of significant differences when it comes to the quality, the speed and everything that comes with it. But nevertheless, the Chinese are actually reusing these boxes in different kind of ways. But in short, that is what an Android box is, what you normally can do with it. But let's get into the emulation, what this means and what it is. But okay, so you can just make it yourself. Yeah, so if you're having an Android box and you're just having the software on an SD card, you can just pop it in and you just have yourself the same result. Of course, when it comes to a ready-to-go plug-and-play kit from, let's say, AliExpress or where you can find them, the thing is you will have a complete kit, so that will contain the Android box, the controllers and the SD card. The only unfortunate thing is with these ready-to-go kits that it's going to be a gamble if you're going to get yourself a good controller. They're 2.4 GHz wireless working on 2 AAA batteries. But these are okay quality, but sometimes you're going to get really cheap ones with horrible joysticks and some with some pretty damn D-pads. So is it a great thing to buy? That is something of a gamble. Building your own kit, you can just decide what kind of Android box you want to use, what kind of size SD card and also what kind of quality SD card. So nevertheless, it's going to be way cheaper to do this, and actually emulation can just be downloaded for free. And that is basically something you need to take consideration. Ready-to-go kits. So basically Super Console X and Pauky box or whatever these things are called are just ready-to-go kits. They will reconfigure, or they try to reconfigure stuff. Some of the boxes are pretty damn bad, some are pretty damn awesome. They will give you a good controller and an official brand or at least a good quality SD card. And you will have sometimes even a modified system when it comes to the software but also the hardware. So everything is slightly optimized and better cooled. So When it comes to these kits, there are like a gazillion of these things. There's absolutely like the jungle of kits, what we're going to talk about too in this video. But again, like it depends what kind of game you want to play, and of course what kind of box you're going to use, because all the kind of different chipset will have a different result when it comes to the emulation part. And size doesn't matter, it's absolutely a fact, because they will sell these things with all kinds of different, let's say, fancy things on it, like a 64GB and 128GB or 256GB, and I even spotted a 512GB. If you think about it, it looks all kind of fancy, but again, like I've said previously, it's like what kind of like SD card are you going to get in the end? Is this a good SD card? And also, is it like not really worth it? Because if you're going to get it, you're not going to get anything special in the end. I have seen it, I have tried it, and when I'm going to pick up 3 different versions or three different sizes, you're just going to get yourself the same product with the same crappy controller sometimes, only with a different SD card, but you're paying so much more for it, up to the point it's not even worth it. So in my case, I think it's not really worth like picking up the biggest model sometimes. Sometimes like the middle class, depending on the price you need to pay for it, is more than enough. Improved versions. Yeah, there are absolutely improved versions there. So what you're going to get are improved versions. They have modified the Android box itself. When we started the shenanigans when it comes to Super Console X, they just basically slapped an old Android box inside a case. But the main problem was like the heat. These things can get really hot after like using it for a couple of hours, and there was no way of getting rid of it. No active fan, there was like minimum cooling when it comes to passive, and they did some modifications when it comes to these acrylic cases. Added a fan, added better cooling, so they did have like some improved versions of different kind of brands, and even some other brands like Super Console X came with a new version that had like absolutely weird looking piece of plastic on it, but it had a fan and way better cooling in the inside. So that is why you have like with improved versions, they try to improve them. The overall quality, how is it with this? Depending on what you're going to buy. Already mentioned before, they did some modification versions because like the original Super Console X had some problems with heat and of course some other issues too. Also the SD cards, I think the biggest problem basically we're facing is like the heat issue, what I mentioned before, but also the cheap chemical controllers and the crappy SD cards you're using. In the beginning they used SanDisk, or I think they were SanDisk. Later on they used like this Chinese brand, not a problem at all because they sell them like separately on AliExpress. But then we had like the issue with the non-brands. Like say when it comes to the quality, you need to be careful what kind of brand you're buying, simply because some of them will use really crappy like SD cards, and that is just the biggest issue, because if your SD card gets corrupted, you need to start all over again. But let's take a close look at the best game box for PlayStation Portable. So when it comes to 3 different boxes, we have like 3 different completely, let's say, differences when it comes to the performance of emulation. So the first one is the S905X, then we have the S905X3, and then we have the X922, there's also like the GT King. So this X3 version I'm holding here is also great, but the GT King is basically of course the king when it comes to emulation, but still there are some quite surprising, let's say, performance things that I found when it comes to these boxes. So let's take a close look at the first one just to see what we're going to get. So let's talk about the chip versions and what is basically like in the end when it comes to emulation performance. The first one we're going to talk about is the S905 series. They have all kinds of versions, but we just wanted to show you the improved edition. And yeah, what can we do with it and what are we going to get? The S905 is an absolutely great box when it comes to overall performance for old school stuff. But up to PlayStation 1, without any problem, you can play it. But when it comes to PlayStation Portable, there we're going to get some issues. And what do I mean with issues? Yeah, it's all fun and game, but this box is not powerful enough to run PlayStation Portable pretty damn good. So when we're going to actually play some two-dimensional stuff, there we do have like some okay performance. We will have like some slowdown, some glitches, stuff like that going on, depending on what kind of emulator you're using. Also, it runs on like 3.9, with most of the time old school PP SSPP emulator, and the overall performance is just not really great. And I think if you want to play PlayStation Portable, in my opinion, this cheap box is great up to PlayStation 1, but when you want to play some PlayStation Portable, it's not like a very fun experience, and I would not really recommend buying something like this. I know it's cheap, yeah, it runs PlayStation Portable, but when games are going to be stuttering like crazy, especially the 3D, for me, it's absolutely a no-go. The next one, when it comes to the lineup, is the S905X3 model. And this model has so much more to offer. When you're looking at the price compared with the old model, it's not like a big step up, but also when you're looking at the firmware and everything, it was so much better. So when you're looking at the S905X3, this thing is so much better than the previous one. It costs a little bit more. You're going to get like, say, a little bit better performance. For example, we do have like 4GB of RAM, we have a better GPU and CPU combination, and this will result in better emulation in overall. And of course, Emulation 4 and higher can be used on this. But how does it come? Well, it's just having like some PlayStation Portable emulation. And overall, we do have like some way better performance. And I mean, like two-dimensional games, most of them run a pretty stable frame rate. We will have maybe some big dips or minor dips when it comes to more demanding games. But I've noticed that PlayStation Portable on this box is pretty damn good. And I must say, like, when you're looking at it, what you're paying for, what you're going to get, I think in overall we cannot really complain with this. And the third one in line is the more faster product, and this is more the chipset that is basically like one of the best ones. Basically why I'm stacking these things together is very simple. They have like slightly different performance boosts, especially when it comes to the Pro, but basically it is more the choice of what you want to buy, because the Pro version is so much more expensive than the normal. But again, these two, in my opinion, are sharing the same kind of chip, only with some slightly like different clock speeds. But again, when it comes to emulation performance, we don't see like a big significant jump up. But when you're looking at the X3 to the X922, there we're going to get like a very nice boost. But is it worth the money? But when you're looking at the GT King, there we're going to get, of course, the best performance from PlayStation Portable, because it's just way more powerful than all the other two. But when you're looking at the step up and the emulation performance, we do have like a lot of games that did have some issues. Think about on Wipeout, 3D games that there's still like stutters, you need to like implement frame skip. But this box will run it slightly better than all the other ones, depending on what model you're getting and of course how optimized and what kind of emulator you're having. As making this video, the GT King 2 was released and I wasn't like really like say excited when it comes to the emulation performance. Maybe in the future it will be better, but this box have even like more to offer, because this thing has a way better, let's say, specification list with the chip A311D2. Nevertheless, let's take a close look at the overall performance and let's talk about it, what I think of the GT King in general. Fuse, one of my favorite games to test and play. So without any frame skipping, you can play up to 61 FPS, but I've noticed when you're going to, let's say, get into wild action with some shooting and explosions, you will see the frames absolutely dip into the 50s sometimes. Unfortunately, it's something that is unavoidable because the chip itself is not just powerful enough. Of course, if possible, we need to talk about the God of War situation. So with some frame skipping, we can able to play this thing on the GT King 2. But yeah, if you want to have like great performance, it's absolutely unavoidable again to like you need to implement frame skip, because this thing is not powerful enough. And I think it's a little bit of a bummer, because nowadays we have like so many like mini PCs with some Bottasera that can play this game actually pretty damn good. But when you're looking the S905X3, the previous box that is way cheaper, we have still like a lot of frame skipping enabled, and with the GT King we don't have to do this with every single game. Of course, and God of War, there we don't have like implement frame skip, but with a Wipeout or other games we can like mess around with the settings and get some pretty good performance. And when you're going to get into two-dimensional stuff, there we're going to get amazing performance with the GT King, or better said the S922 chipset, and I think it has like a lot of potential when it comes to PlayStation Portable. In my opinion, these are basically the three ways you can go to when it comes to the chipset and support with Emulation. The S905 is more like the base model, has a lot to offer, but comes with a lot of problems and a lot of flaws when it comes to emulation on certain systems. Then we have like the S905X3. This device has just like new options, new kind of firmware possibilities, and again, it's just a step up. And of course then we have like the other chipset itself, and this chip is absolutely like the king of them all. But again, it will come always with some problems, and I mean like the problems like still having some emulation issues. But again, it has like so much more to offer, and this is basically the lineup of system where you can basically build yourself, get yourself a kit or whatsoever you want to do with it. One of the better ways to play are just mini PC solutions, because you can pick these things up for sometimes like $75 up to $150, depending when you want to buy it, where you want to buy it, because there are like different prices in different countries. I've noticed here when looking at the US. Nevertheless, the mini PCs are like absolutely a great way to play, and we don't have any limitation when it comes to PlayStation Portable or the limitation that I've spoken of with the game boxes. Sometimes a mini PC comes almost with the same price or a little bit more expensive, but you're going to get way better performance when it comes to PlayStation Portable in general. Or you just buy yourself like a mini PC. Sometimes you can pick them up from $125 up to $175 with the Intel Celeron G series, and they will have like a way better, like say, overall performance with PlayStation Portable, at least at 1x resolution, and of course with no frame skipping whatsoever, and you can play a lot of stuff on this without any hassle than we have with a game box or an Android box. It's not really an Android game box that we've talked about with the other version, but I just want to implement it in this video. The Nvidia Shield, the normal but also the Pro are like capable of running PSP like the best, the king. Basically not like the GT King, but as a king, because it has so much better performance. Let's take a close look at it. God of War will struggle, but in the end, when you're doing a little bit of modification with God of War, it will run fine on the system itself, because God of War will still be more like the game that's very hard to emulate. And in combination with Nvidia Shield Pro, you can play a lot of great games on 60 FPS in combination with 2x resolution. So I think the Nvidia Shield Pro is a very cool device, and you can see what a lot of these Chinese boxes are struggling. PSP is running very well on the Nvidia Shield Pro.
You win. Round 2. Fight.
Okay, so when you're looking at God of War, Chain of Kinkiness, Chain of Olympus, so what you're going to get with this game, it's going to be like an okay performance. Yeah, nowadays we do have devices like handheld that run on 60 FPS, but for Android boxes this is basically the best we can get. You can see like it dips all from 50 up to 60, kind of weird, so it's not a stable frame rate, a little bit of a bummer in my opinion. But when you're looking at the GT King, for example, that still is not powerful enough to run this game actually, or you need to have adding some frame skipping. The conclusion is like the cheap boxes or the cheap Android boxes are not like really capable of running PlayStation Portable as it should be, at least to enjoy the games. And when you're looking at the S95 X3 in the middle, we have like an okay performance, and the GT King have like better performance, but also comes with a very big price tag that I'm more like thinking, is really worth it? That is something you need to decide. Thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and it would be great to see you in the next video.